Smita, welcome Anya. It's really nice to have both of you today on this panel. And I wanted to share with everybody that what is another thing that is very interesting is that all three of us are alum of the same college, Lady Shriram College. And the fact that we're all here and sharing successes says a lot about that college as well. I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to introduce you to the audience. Smita has founded Sampark 30 years back. It's an NGO that works to empower the most vulnerable, including migrants and rural communities. And they have many interventions, including literacy, nutrition, skilling, and also access to social protection. They do this both in the grassroots and as well as with advocacy at the policy level. That's about Smita. And Anya, who's just graduated from college, started an organization called Girl Uprise, and what they do is they aspire to basically sort of create women empowerment and spread that amongst young women today. They want to create a nexus of women leaders in civil society with a specific focus on women who are legal specialists, and also on the topic of menstrual hygiene. And besides starting the Girls Uprise, Anya has done a heck of a lot of work during the COVID 2.0. She ran something called the COVID Fighters and started this huge organization of over 13,000 people who they did a lot. I mean, they did an incredible amount of work helping all kinds of really beleaguered citizens at that time. So welcome to both of you, Smita and Anya.
Thank you. Thank you, Suki.
So the thing that I've known both of you pretty well over the last few months, and the thing that really struck me, which is very interesting, is that both of you are generations apart, and yet you both decided to start your careers with being in the social space. So Anya, I'm going to ask both of you to take a couple of minutes and just share with me what actually motivated you to be in this space. So Anya, if you could go first.
Hi, thank you so much for introducing us and being so kind to hold this and moderate us. I think the starting point was actually very personal to me and my upbringing. I've been born and brought up by a single parent, and my mother lead families, they can lead industries, and they can be great leaders. And it's also very important to extend our privilege to those who don't have it. I do come from a privileged background, and I wanted to work towards creating a space and a platform which is accessible and inclusive and also diverse, which is what led to the startup of Girl Uprise, just to make a platform. And I also think that LSR played a very, very important role in that. When I joined college, we were introduced to NSS, and I was lucky enough to have the space to start my own project, which is called Aghas, for social entrepreneurship and empowering women through economic independence. And through all of those means, I really understood the importance of social development and also empowering people while getting empowered in the process. So I think it's been very personal to me how all of this means so much to me, and how I know it means so much to other people, so that I can help them also and create a platform where all of us can come together.
Awesome, Anya. Smita, share your journey of how you started. Smita, you're on mute.
Thank you, Suki. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. I would like to say one word before I start about my story. And that is that I would like to put on record our thanks to FICCI, because I am a co-convener on the digital inclusion group. You are a co-convener, and we have been receiving a lot of support and links from FICCI. So yeah, just recording thanks to FICCI before I start. And so how did I start? I could actually ditto what Anya has experienced maybe 40 years down the line. I entered Lady Shriram. I wanted to do something worthwhile. I joined the NSS, and through NSS went to villages and saw poor people for the first time. like really how they live. But also what I saw was the well-to-do, was their generosity, was their, was the villages, how they opened up to all of us, keeping 50 to 100 people there doing, and we did physical work, right? We made roads for them, for instance. So that kind of teamwork and that kind of community work, it really attracted me. And I think though I was not as, let's say, as clear as Anya is now, it took me an MA and an MBA to finally discover that this is what I want to do. And also, like you, Anya, I was also aided by my professors. So in the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad, when I told them that I don't want to go to industry, they sent me to the best NGOs to learn. And they created projects and learning spaces for me, which made a big difference, which meant that I stepped out of my management education, knowing what I wanted to do and knowing that, my teachers had my back.
That's
So
awesome.
it was very, very valuable.
That's awesome.
Never
So,
look back, Suki, never look back from development work.
I should say though that I'm in this space relatively newly, like so. But it's interesting to hear to hear your journey. And before we get on to the main topic of today, Smita, there's a question I have for you. That what do you see the difference? You went on the journey 30 years back. What do you see the difference between being in this space now versus what was it like 30 years back to have started then?
Yeah, so 30 years back, the NGO world was completely different, Suki. And yeah, sure. And it's interesting that you ask that, because you've spent like 20 plus years in the for-profit sector and now come into the non-profit space, and now you're negotiating it and learning about the space. In 1980, when I stepped in, it was more the welfare paradigm which was there, right? People
Right.
were just, Gandhian economics was still around. Looking at industrialists as philanthropists was very common. And the welfare paradigm also framed women. For instance, they framed women as, mothers or wives. So women were framed in the patriarchal paradigm still.
Right.
And NGOs were doing things to help poor people. Over time, that changed into participation. And much later came in, Paulo Freire's thinking about conscientizing people and so on, and participatory work came in. But the empowerment paradigm, that came in very much later, like last 20 years.
Right.
So just to continue that example on gender, right? Earlier, it was still, if the popular quotes were, if you educate a woman, you educate a family, things like that. So her income going to family, her education supporting, so mother role still being prominent. Today, women's empowerment is a different story. Today, women are happy to be independent. You do not need family, and you can be single. So today, the meaning of empowerment is, I think, much wider, much stronger. And yeah, I guess Anya can talk a little more about what empowerment means today.
Yeah, I guess I can't ask Anya the question about what it was like 30 years back, right? You weren't even born then. But Anya, what would you say about this? Like, I mean, in terms of what Smita shared.
I actually highly agree. And so, like you both have mentioned that I will not probably know what happened 30 years ago, but I do agree. I think empowerment for us and for people in my generation or one generation before me uh, is very, very different for how it would have been in the earlier times. And I think it's more to do with productivity. I think it's more to do with your independence and how you want to lead the space. Earlier, I think it was just separating yourself from the values that have been attached to you and the things that you're supposed to do. But I still feel that the definition of an ideal woman has slightly shifted, but it's still almost the same. I mean, today, an ideal woman might be someone who's working, but at the end of the day, she must be a good mother, or she must look after her family, and she must have those few qualities that have been attached to being an ideal woman. So I think today empowerment also means shattering this belief that, there is one definition of an ideal woman, because I feel regardless of our backgrounds, all of us can be ideal women. Or what we do, what we don't doesn't just define how we can or cannot be ideal women. So I can just tell you from what I've seen, and I'm also empowerment today is so different. Be about your profession or your personal life, and like Smita already mentioned, it's much more diverse than how years ago.
So, I mean, you said some very interesting things, and that, and that this is going to be a topic for another day altogether. This whole thing about women empowerment, but sort of, and then to bring it back to the main, the topic of today, I have a question, and I'm directing that to you, Smita. And that is it really. I mean, you mentioned about how in the earlier days it was basically philanthropy, but in today's world for the last couple of decades, there has been CSR, and there's sort of private companies have many cases been mandated to to contribute towards philanthropy and the common good and development, etc. So my understanding is that there's sort of this area where, especially when there's a stress in the market and the economies, organizations will end up doing only what is absolutely mandatory and not necessarily more, unless there is a very strong ethos within the company to actually who believes that sustainability is not just about giving money away because you're mandated to do it, but also because it is actually built into the DNA of the company. And it's not necessary that all organizations are like that. And often NGOs and the work that they come up with come up across companies who then therefore don't look at it as something which is a part of their business. And so I just wanted to have a sense from you. What's your take on that? What has been your experience with that? Do corporates view NGOs as just something that they have to put up with because they're mandated to do it, or do they really think that they're equal partners in going down a path that they would like to go down as well?
Yeah, thank you. So earlier, when in early phases of development, companies used to fund community work or social work around their factories, for instance.
Right.
They would have either taken up the forests or the land that, villages where people were established. There was a lot of displacement, and communities were stressed, right? So what they used to do was that just outside their plants, they would start rural development work, which means that they would do some trainings or educate some people's children and stuff like that, start schools. And it was primarily for maintaining better relations with your workers and their families and the communities around. So the motivations were different, right? And they were very not saying that that has vanished. In some companies, it's still there. But I think it's opened up a lot. And you're right, without CSR, there was much less money coming into development. With the CSR Act, now there is, there was 20,000 crores available 2 years ago. Today it's 40,000 crores. It's increasing every year. And companies are also beginning to realize and go beyond the law a little, because if they are looking for, first of all, so initially, again, when the CSR was introduced, they were looking at which NGOs to support. So very many companies started their own NGOs very quickly, right? And then there was a very clear mandate. You cannot do that. You can't do just your own labor relations and say that it's social work, right? So then they started going beyond that. And now today, a lot of companies are committed to agendas. So some people might pick up education, others might pick up women's empowerment, others might pick up livelihoods, and so on. and many are even willing to support rights-based work. Not so many, because under the Income Tax Act, there are only 3 or 4 things which are allowed. So education, health, work on disaster, relief work, these are the things. Working with disabled people, these are 4 or 5 categories of work which are allowed under the Income Tax Act. CSR by definition, or almost by mandate, takes up these 4 or 5 sets of activities. They are not by law prevented from doing rights-based work, but very many CSR companies, especially the middle range, small ones who want to give 3 lakhs, 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs a year, they stick to the activities allowed under the Income Tax Act. So there are some like that, but there are many, many who have gone beyond adopted agendas and are actually looking for 2 things. One is NGOs in the fields where they want to make an influence, and second is NGOs where their own staff can engage. Because like you said a little bit earlier, they do want to bring the culture of caring within the organization. So they want their staff to offer pro bono time and services.
Right. So I had a question on that. Is I sometimes think about the fact that in today's world, with the with the SDGs and organizations also participating in that, with this whole ethos of doing good, which is also seen as a great brand. I had an interesting conversation with someone the other day about, do companies really do this because they wanted to do it, or are they doing it because it's a great marketing, pitch or brand? And of course, it doesn't have to be either or. It could be just both. I mean, you will do it for all good reasons. It also enhances in some ways stakeholder value. Can you give me an example of, in Sampark, for example, how have an example of a private company that has actually engaged with you to do real groundwork and has not necessarily done it only because it's a great brand value for them? Do you have an example you could share?
I have many, but for instance, Moody.
Right.
It's in Moody's. It's a financial
rating. Yeah.
It's a rating company.
Yeah.
They came and they started working with us on migrant workers' rights, and they helped us to set up workers' facilitation centers. They also asked us whether we would let their staff come, and we were of course very happy to take them to the field. Then one company that came, they actually asked us if we would take their people on our board, and that the board refused because they saw a conflict of interest between the donor sitting on the NGO management board.
Right.
So they said we can have a funding agency come and talk separately to us, but not be on the board. And I remember that company took this decision so well. Like, they didn't hold it against Sampark. They didn't take their money back. They just said, yes, we understand and we're fine with it. Right? Recently, we had Hexaware, Mobiquity, because with the COVID-19 pandemic, we started, as you know, with the LSR alumni, an initiative on digital inclusion. We needed to raise money for 165 LSR students who were sitting in all corners of India and needed laptops to be digitally connected. We needed to raise that fund. A lot of the LSR alumni came up and put up their contacts and so on. And through one of them, we got Mobiquity and Hexaware to contribute to Sampark for these laptops. Now, not at one point of time did they want themselves to be advertised. The only thing they asked for was one video to show what we did to their own teams. They actually didn't use it as a marketing collateral. So I think there's a difference between the old time, companies who used to advertise, let's say, Coca-Cola or Pepsi or something through fairs that they did in colleges, to today's companies that actually support very serious empowerment work. And they don't really, many of them don't really look for look for advertisement from us, but showing value to their shareholders and to their staff.
Right.
They do that, but in different ways.
Yeah. And so I'm just picking up on something you said about those categories in which companies are mandated. And it occurs to me that they're all sort of companies which are really doing very infrastructural work in terms of health, education, etc., etc. And what's your take on what the role that government plays in all of this, and how it is being shared or sort of in some ways handed off to companies to do this?
So yeah, that last line is very valid. Over a period of time, government has been reducing its expenditures on health and education. It has not kept pace with the GDP growth in our country. Today, health expenditures and education expenditures are so low, especially in education. We have also followed the strategies of consolidating schools.
Right.
Now, when you consolidate a school, you can give it a name saying this is a resource school and therefore close 6 schools around it or 10 schools around it and make one school the resource school. What happens with that is that especially adolescents and adolescent girls, if they're getting into middle and high school, they cannot walk 10 kilometers with safety and so on. So you have girls dropping out at the age of puberty and, high school and so on. Because of all these kind of things, and also school quality has been going down. So first, companies were asked to adopt schools. NGOs were asked to adopt schools. Slowly, basically, what I'm trying to say is that the government is abrogating its responsibility for health and education and leaving it more and more to the private sector, right? And at one point of time, even today, the logic that is used for this, even senior government officials actually tell you, oh, the government can't manage things. Private sector knows how to manage, and private sector knows how to be efficient and effective, so give it to them. I don't buy that argument. This is the government's job to do health and education, and private sector can exist side by side, but you cannot abrogate your responsibility to corporates.
Yeah,
that's happening more and more.
Yeah, a lot of it is, I think, also to do with funding, which sort of brings me to my next question, ladies. And Anya, I'm going to direct this first to you. And this is really about, there's always this notion that there's an inequality between NGOs and the companies that they seek funding from. And that NGOs themselves sometimes feel that they're always at the risk. I mean, going in and asking for funding, so it's sort of an unequal level. That's not necessarily the case, because NGOs have a lot of expertise and experience in doing the kind of things that they specialize in, which corporates and private sector organizations don't. And there is a mutual meeting ground, and that's what I believe in. And in your very fledgling time with Girl Uprise and all of the other initiatives that you've done, can you share what has been your experience in terms of fundraising through organizations, if at all? And has there been any other way you've raised funds, if not through private organizations, because of some issues with that?
So I'll be answering this question in two parts. The first will be, is the relationship unequal, and then probably our fundraising experience. So I don't think it's a black and white situation. And I do feel that
I think she's
all
not audible properly.
Between companies and NGOs. Hello?
Anya, sorry, I'm going to have to ask you, can you start again? Because I think your audio wasn't clear.
Yeah. Is it fine now? Or is it still bad?
No, it's okay now, but I think your video is gone.
Right. I was just saying it's raining heavily outside, so probably the reason for the weak internet. Am
Okay.
I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible now. Yeah.
Right. So I was saying I will probably answer this question in two halves. The
Right.
first being relationships and what my opinion is on whether they are equal or unequal. And the second being our experience with fundraising and how we've done it, what problems or good things that we like about fundraising. For the first part, I don't think all relationships between NGOs and private sector are the same, right? It's not a black and white situation. I think it differs from NGO to NGO, company to company. But I do believe that today we live in a world where both are generally considered as equal partners because both of them have equal stakes in what they want to achieve. Um, the NGO might have on-ground experience and might be better at something. The company might have expertise in something else, but they go hand in hand and none can work without the other. So I do feel, and at least in the experience that I've had, we've never really faced a situation where, they ask us to do more or they expect us to do more and are giving less in return. We've always sort of been on an equal platter. But I do believe there are some companies who want to exploit this field and take advantage of NGOs. But I think NGOs generally drop out of such agreements because they do know that they have an expertise in a particular matter and something cannot be worked without the other hand. It's like a right and a left hand, and both of them are wheels together. For the second part, we've sort of used online fundraising and the help of social media.
Anya, your voice is
We've been using Mila as a platform to fundraise for all the things that we've been doing, especially.
Cannot hear her, Suki.
Anya, sorry, I wasn't able to hear you again after the when you moved on to the second part of what you were saying. Your audio went off a bit.
Can you hear me now? No, can you hear me? Or you still can't hear me?
Yeah, it's clear. So if you can restart again from the second half of what you were saying, it would be great.
Yeah. So I was saying for fundraising, we've just been working online. To be very honest, we haven't worked with bigger private organizations because they have a requirement for you to be registered and post a lot of things. They really are very specific about how the money is being used. I don't think they're that specific with the corporate needs that they have. But as soon as they have to put money in the social sector, I think they become a little stringent about everything. But fundraising has been very, very successful for us. I do feel that I think Smita also mentioned this before, that a lot of people are very interested in building communities together and the kind of outcome that can have rather than advertisement or the kind of benefits they reap out of it. They want to build communities, they want to do pro bono work, and they want to go above and beyond to help and aid these initiatives. So I think social media and fundraising platforms have worked very well for us in terms of achieving the goals that we want to achieve. And I feel like all of this comes together as, I think, a part of the sustainable development goals, right? Partnership for the goals. No goal or nothing can be achieved unless different sectors work together. So I believe that the private and the social development sector, when they do work in unison, I think they
Anya, we've lost you again.
Great heights, but they cannot and often are not able to work without one another in a, I would say, in a. Hello?
Anya, we lost you, but I'm just.
Am I back?
No, you're sort of fading in and out.
Right. Nothing. I was just completing the last line. Can you hear me still, or you still can't hear me?
No, can't hear you very. I mean, your voices are not coming as well. But I'm just going to paraphrase what I think you were saying, and you were basically saying that what your experience has been is that what works really well in the short term and the long term is when both NGOs and the private sector partner together. That's really when both the short term and long term goals can be met in a sustainable way. If that's not the case, then there's no partnership or there's no success on the ground that can actually be seen. That's what I think you were saying. Smita, until Anya gets her audio together, can I ask you to explain, I mean, to describe what your thoughts on that are?
Yeah, sure. I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, two, three things,
I can't hear you.
Okay, now my audio is on, Suki. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Okay. So let me just answer this question about,
Smita, I can't hear you.
Anya could.
You're audible. You're audible.
Okay, thank you. So I think I'll continue, Suki, because I'm audible to everybody else. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm saying.
I'm going to take a minute because I'm not able to hear anybody.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, let me answer Suki's question in the meanwhile. So this issue of, is the relationship between corporate and social sector equal? I think it's very, very, good to be in touch with some companies where the relationship is equal and respectful. And as NGOs grow, you can choose companies and stay with those companies, but that is by no means the ordinary case, right? Even when Sampark started CSR work and we had companies come to us when we were less powerful, the equation was always the company saying, you can spend on this, you cannot spend on this. Very often they do not allow NGOs to spend on senior staff, right? They understand program staff, they understand teachers or helpers, but the moment you start putting managerial staff or you start putting, fundraising staff or anything which they see as non-programmatic but relevant to the NGO, they cut it out. Similarly, when it comes to creches, for instance, now we need to spend on children's food. Many companies tell you, why do you have to spend 1,000 rupees per month per child? Why can't you manage with 500, 600? Now, this is not something you would do with your own child, but when they are giving money to an NGO, they feel that it's okay to negotiate on these things. So until an NGO arrives at a level where it can negotiate with companies, till then the power equation remains a little bit very clearly unbalanced, and the power is more in the hands of the donor. But we have in Sampark, we have found something else also. Like we work on builder sites and we work on construction sites, and there are small contractors, and we have found that small contractors as well as builders who see the work that an NGO does day in and day out, they are willing to contribute small amounts of money. So what we do is that we top up what the company gives us from CSR with the money that contractors give us and small builders give us, and then we are able to offer full services to the children or the parents that we work with. So many times an NGO also has to do a lot of balancing and collectivizing funds and then working through that. Suki, are you able to hear now?
I believe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so there's some problem, there's some technical issue, so I have not been able to hear anything you said. So I'm going to quickly leave and try and sign in again and see, hope that works.
Okay, so I'm just
I'm
going
sorry
to
about
take
this,
the
guys.
time, take the time that Suki comes back to talk about Sampark's partnership with FICCI. So we started the digital inclusion project. And after that, because that was focused on Lady Shri Ram College and its students. And then FICCI came, and FICCI had started this digital inclusion initiative. And we decided that with FICCI, we will spread it across the country. So the next project that we started was for women all across the country in two rural, we chose first two rural locations where we got rural girls who had finished school and were in college to come and take training in computers. So they would be able to not only connect with other women and girls and do some training themselves, but they would also be able to improve their livelihoods because they would be able to market products made in the villages. Now, this is a project that was started, and with FICCI, because FICCI itself does a lot of fundraising, we didn't have to face the CSR companies ourselves. FICCI dealt with the donors, and FICCI spoke to the donors, and FICCI negotiated for the rural hubs to go through. So something that we started with urban colleges like LSR was spread to rural colleges because we had these kind of aggregators. FICCI was basically and is still an aggregator. And what it does is it, through the digital inclusion initiative, it brings in money for digital inclusion of women. Through its mentoring initiative, it brings in funds to NGOs who can then do mentoring. And then they offer a platform where all these kind of entrepreneurship support, mentoring, digital inclusion, all these initiatives can come together and in a very holistic way empower women. So that this kind of aggregation support, this also helps a lot of NGOs to essentially reach and benefit from corporate money. It's one level of buffering, and it's better connections and better negotiations because the aggregator, someone like FICCI, they can do this job. So what we can do, Deepika, is that if we open it to questions, because Suki has not yet come in, let's open the floor to questions and I can take some questions.
Suki is here. Suki is here. You'll just need to unmute her.
Okay.
And
Smita, are you able to hear me?
Yes, very well.
Unfortunately, I can't hear. I don't know why, but I'm not able to hear anything you're saying.
Sorry about this, but do you have further questions or should we open up to the audience then?
So here's here. I don't want to sort of take too much away from the topic that we're talking with. So I'm going to request you to. I'm going to just chat the question out, and then if you can answer that question, so everybody can hear what you have to say. Unfortunately, I won't be able to respond back to whatever you said right now to the question about funding because I wasn't able to hear a word of it. I'm really sorry about that. Right. So I'm just going to chat. Actually, I can ask you the question because you're able to hear me, right? So this question is actually both for you and for Anya, and that is that what do you think has been the impact of all the social media tools that we have today at our disposal, and how has it helped or hindered in the social space? And maybe because I think Anya is also having problems accessing this, I'll ask you, Smita, to go first.
Okay, thank you. So basically, I think it makes a huge difference. Technological capabilities using social media makes a huge difference. In Sampark's case, what we did, because we are a traditional NGO and we didn't have all these things set up, over the last 2 years, we have invested very heavily in becoming tech savvy. So we connected up with organizations like Dana Mojo and Give India and other platforms, and through them, it became then possible to raise funds. So a diversified strategy became possible, that we don't just depend on CSR. We never in any case depend on government money. That's very difficult to get in a honest manner, and to be able to do decent work through just government funds, you have to top them up, and you have to make sure that the government projects are meaningful for the people. So we did need, and we went in for setting up increasing our online fundraising capability. And with that, we got several thousand people contributing. And this actually, and then we got also support from Google. We got support from NASCOM Foundation to increase our abilities. And we had some really tech people from NASCOM doing, and Adobe came in and helped us. And their volunteers worked with us. They gave us pro bono time, and they helped us to build our tech capabilities. So social media was extremely important, not only in raising funds, but putting out the stories very quickly to tell people what the impact was, and connect them not just to the NGO, but where the money was going and what benefit it was having. So to every donor, then the story became complete because of social media. So I am not actually personally, my learning curve is still some way to go, but we do have young people in Sampark who are managing all this setup, and yeah, we have benefited a huge deal through social inclusion, through social media.
Suki, can you hear me? Smita,
Thank you,
can you hear
Smita.
me?
And we can hear you.
Awesome. Smita, I think you will also have
I'm
to
going a
make
little
me
blind here because I'm
co-host.
not able. This technical issue is still happening. I just want to check that is Anya. Anya, are you able to hear, or
Yes,
are you able to?
Yes,
yes,
Suki,
yes,
Anya is able to hear and speak.
Okay, so Anya, can I ask you for your take on this question?
yes. I was just saying, Smita, you will also have to make me co-host so I can turn on my video. Uh, so for social media, I think it's played a very, very important role for us, not just as Girl Up Rise, but for COVID Fighters India as well. I think it has been a tool for us to increase our outreach, to make impact, and actually also onboard a lot of volunteers for all the work that we wanted to do. One thing that we have been working on is adaptive leadership, right? I think Smita also talked about the pandemic and how hardly it hit everyone, especially the social development sector. So we, in fact, have been working on activities, and that's only been possible because of social media. I think it also plays a very important role in the things that are happening around us and trying to COVID Fighters India. It was people who need the help to those who can help them through COVID Fighters, and through constantly verifying the resources online to make it easier for people who need the resources. We were a community of more than 13,000 people working online day in and day out, working on SOS calls only because of social media and how we were able to use it. So it's been a huge help for us, not just for Girl Up Rise, but of course, helping saving lives during the pandemic. So I think social media has definitely helped us reach out to people who we otherwise wouldn't have been able to help unless we had social media. And I also think that I think Smita talked about how you can take people through the journey or through the progress. So a lot of people who are invested in the things that we're doing, not just in a monetary sense, but in general, they want to see the work that we've been doing has only been possible because of social media. I have volunteers across the country. We even have people across the world helping us because of social media. So I think it's a great power that social media has given us and equipped us to do more.
Anya, thank you so much. And I think I would love to continue this a little bit more because you said some very interesting things, but almost up to time for asking Q&A. So I'm going to stop here and then ask if are there any questions that any of the people have about the things we've discussed. Deepika, if you can bump those up. Okay, so one of the questions that's come up is that are there any challenges specific to women who lead NGOs? And Anya, I'd like it if you could with with your experience in the last couple of years and in today's day, and I'll first take this to you and then to Smita.
I think, and this is something that I think Smita will also relate to, but I hope you don't relate to it. People often see us in a very soft position. Our roles are seen as not very powerful, and I feel like they often want to overpower you or the things that you do. So the kind of perception that people have towards social work, and especially women's social work, is that you can do this on the side, but you should also look for other things to do. And this is something that I have been getting. I've just graduated, and I hear a lot of people telling me that why do you want to build a career in social development? Why don't you do it by the side? That's not going to help you gain anything. And I keep trying to explain to them that it's not only about gaining, it's also about helping others gain. And other than that, I think people question your choices and your decisions a lot. When you're running an organization, be it in the social sector or any other sector, and if you're a woman, they question you a lot. And I don't think they would have done the same thing if a man was in our position. They question your decisions, your choices, your opinions, and I don't want to say accountable, but they hold you in a very bad light when it comes to something going wrong. Like it's because of us or our personal traits. It's never because of other circumstances that could have come up. So one thing that I feel like should definitely change is the kind of outlook people have towards women in the social sector and women in industries and leading positions in general. We're not there because of any other reason but the fact that we have capability and we've worked hard, and that's our choice. So I think that really needs to start happening.
Thank you, Anya. And Smita, for you, what is your experience with this?
So my experience is that, not very different from Anya, but essentially that if women start NGOs, just like businesses, women's NGOs tend to, if one were to do research, and I'm just talking from practice, I don't think there is research that exists on this, but research exists on businesses. When women start businesses, they tend to be smaller, they tend to grow slower, and they plateau out at a much smaller level, except when women inherit the businesses as, from their fathers or as widows or something like that. So it's this pretty much the same in NGOs. When men started coming into NGOs are bigger, they get more trust, they get more money. Somehow it's seen as, that men somehow are more trusted. And even to the extent, and this goes back to what Anya was saying, to the extent that if men give themselves salaries in NGOs, it's more easily accepted, and women are actually expected to work pro bono, right? So a lot of women-headed NGOs and even organizations like big organizations that are women's organizations actually tend to underpay their women staff, underpay all staff. So women's NGOs actually pay way less than NGOs headed by men. And corporate culture comes much more easily to men-headed NGOs than to women-headed NGOs. That's also true. So yeah, we need to do more research on this. But for instance, and also awards. I mean, I know of people who were in the social sector, let's say even in the microfinance sector, which first started in NGOs and then became a business, who used to appoint 1 or 2 MBA interns to get themselves awards. Okay, and then once you get the award, then your NGO goes to a level where you can scale up faster. These are things that I don't know. I never, as a woman, thought about it, whether it's a gender-related trait or my trait, I don't know. But there are lots of, if you look at Ashoka Fellows, right? And you look at how many men and how many women have they made Ashoka Fellows, I can guarantee you there are way more men than women over there. So I think women's recognition also, so it's everything works in a way that women-led NGOs tend to have more questions, have a harder time getting credibility, and have a harder time achieving scale.
I think one thing I wanted to add to what
Thank you, Smita. Thank you, Anya, for this.
So can you hear me?
For all your insights, and thank you so much for sharing your experiences in this space, and also for for sort of stating out there that if you look at the topic of the talk today, like are corporates and CSO, are they strange bedfellows, or are they social partners? And clearly, I think what's been established is that they are social partners. One in the space of sustainability, the common good, etc. There's no two ways about that. I mean, the two have to work hand in hand with the resources, etc. that one part has, and the skills and on the ground experience, etc. that the other part has. It has to go hand in hand. And it's been very insightful talking to you both, especially the last bit about the gender angle of that. And there's a lot of insights that I want to be able to bring up and talk about, and maybe we'll do that at another time. I'm just going to check if there are any more questions. There's some comments about, somebody has a comment saying that not much has changed over the generations. That's true. Anya, is there something you'd like to share?
I was talking before. I was actually saying that Smita talked about something very important about financial aspect of men and women, and I also think that
Anya,
can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Hear you,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. I was saying a lot of questions are also raised on how we can manage our finances in terms, and especially in relation to how men can do it when they lead NGOs. I also think that there is this understanding of society that we only work towards smaller issues. But if it is a man-led NGO, or if it has more men on the board or more men working in that NGO, they automatically feel that it's more structured and we're all over the place. And this is what I've seen people see about us or other initiatives that are women-led, that there is this outlook that women are emotional and are not able to understand how structures and organizational structure works. But I honestly think I've seen much better organizational structures by women-led NGOs than any other. So I think I just wanted to add to what Smita was saying.
Well, I think we're sort of a majority of 3 here, so and I completely agree. I mean, there is so much of if you on a sort of final note, there's so much of planning and multitasking and decision making that most women do pretty much as soon as they become adult of any sorts, and then transitioning that to work life, professional, whether it's a not-for-profit space or any other space, is fairly seamless, I would think. And as long as you know the technicality of those worlds, it is very much the same. There's this ability to make decisions on the fly, without really too much of data is something that comes almost automatically to most women. So it's I think there's some research out there. I can't be sure about it, but there is some research out there that there are many. There's some research which says that boards which have women on them tend to take decisions which are better in the long run. And I mean, somebody could shoot me for this because I don't remember the data offhand. But that is so true, Anya. There are many nice comments coming in, by the way. They're saying women are more organized. About time you accepted that. All right. So I think we're kind of done. Thank you so much, Smita and Anya. And thank you, Vicky, once again for supporting us in this with this discussion of ours. And thank you all of you participants who've joined in. Sorry for the little technical glitch that was there in the middle. It would be great if Uma could, Uma, if you're there, would you be able to come in and just say a few words before we sign off?
I think we will have to make her co-host as well if she wants to unmute herself.
Okay. Deepika, would it be possible for you to unmute Uma and maybe enable her video for her to be able to say something?
Hello. Hi. I think the video is okay. Because there's a bit of a bandwidth issue also. But yeah, I was trying to unmute myself. No, I think thank you so much, Smita and Anya and Suki. I think it was such a wonderful session, and especially in the NGO space, social sector space, all of us, we see so much of this of, men running NGOs and the social sector, and but very interestingly, I always feel that from the corporate side, many of the CSR heads are women, interestingly. And and the NGO space, you do see a lot more men. But I think, like Smita shared, and even Anya, I think it's so much more structured the way, and there's a long-term vision. And even within that long-term vision, there's so much granularity while doing all of our social sector work. So once again, I think it was such a lively discussion, and this discussion can go on and continue, I know. So thank you so much for partnering with us and doing this whole discussion today, Smita and Anya and Suki. Thank you so much once again on behalf of Vicky.
Thank you, Uma. Thank you very much. And I think we should just schedule a calendar of these.
Yes.
Different
topics. It'll be wonderful. Yes.
And thank you for all the participants for making the time to attend this. Really appreciate this and hope you found it interesting and informative there. Thank you so much, Smita and Anya, once again.
Thank you, Suki, for your wonderful comparing. Thanks for being the moderator.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nitin, you got everything? We can switch on our videos. I can stop the recording.
We'll have to stop the live stream as well, right?
Huh?
We'll have to stop the live stream as well, right?
I think we're still live. Somebody would have to stop live.